something that's not in this book, that might be in the next book. I want to ask, what now and what next? What next for me as a whistleblower? What now for me as a whistleblower? And what next for you as South Africa? And what now for South Africa? I'm raising this question because I am very concerned, I think we are all very concerned about the issue of land and what has been pronounced by government and what the intentions of government are. I submit that there is black expectation on one hand, and things shouldn't be like that. There is black expectation and there is white consternation. And I think both are founded, historically and otherwise. But what is missing currently is government has abdicated its responsibility to be in the middle correctly of the consternation and the expectation. Because I think it is a duty of government to facilitate and not to put citizens in angst or not to whip up emotions of a group of citizens against another group of citizens. So my question, what next? Are we going to sit and wait for a government that's following on its political ambitions and abdicating its responsibilities and do nothing whilst we sit in our corners with our consternations and with our expectations? Are we going to demand that we are facilitated to find a middle ground out of which everybody would be a winner and there would be no losers? So there are scholars in this house. I think you too have a responsibility, and writers. In fact, most of you, I think, are either writers or scholars or both, or readers. I think this is an opportunity for you to lead. We cannot expect government to lead. Our government has failed. Government is going to attempt to lead after next year's election only, and it might be too late. My expectation is that government is going to play this card of land to secure votes, and then only after the elections in 2019, there would be a half-hearted attempt to address the expectations and the consternations. But I think we should not wait for that time. We should demand responsibility and accountability, and we should fold up our sleeves and give ourselves direction if nobody's giving us direction. Maybe in my next book I will address although my second book is already almost set and done, this new challenge. I think everybody that wants to properly be part of steering us in the right direction as a nation should do their effort, either through writing or through facilitation or through whatever means, to steer us towards a point where we can find solutions and we can stop tearing at one another. This book's title is No Holy Cows, because when I wanted to publish with Penguin and with Jacana particularly told me that because I was talking about people like in government, the president, some ministers, calling them by name, accounting word by word for things they did that I know about, that I have witnessed. I guess all publishing houses do not want to be held liable. They have to protect themselves against libel issues. They were scared to publish my book. I was supposed to change the names of characters, make it fictitious, and also change the settings where things occurred. After doing that, and when I looked at the product, I did not like it. So I wrote back to them and I said to them, I think government is not holy cows, not to be touched, not to be spoken of, especially when it goes on the wrong path. So that was how the title of this book was given birth to. It started as my autobiography, which I began when I was 35, because I had fallen very sick at age 35. My first child was almost 4.5, and I was carrying a baby boy. I had a touch of TB, and they were also querying cancer because I was having a lot of black stools. After a few months, I realized that if I would have died, what would have people said about me? And I said, let me write my own life story. By the time I was 40, I was a member of parliament, and I had completed that biography and put it aside, and it was handwritten, still handwritten. Then I had this first accident that landed me in hospital where I was supposed to be amputated. I was told I would never walk again. When I could walk, but I was told I'd forever be on a wheelchair. And I spent about 11 months in and out of hospital. My father died, I could not bury him. And then I said, but how am I going to and in fact, just before my leg injury is linked to my quiet fights inside the ANC on Nkandla and on the genesis of state capture. So eventually I got injured, I almost died, and I was in hospital. So I asked myself again, what now? So I decided maybe I should document what I have seen and what I know and what I have heard and what I was involved in and what I had tried to prevent to happen insofar as corruption is concerned. So eventually I decided, okay, let me make this a continuation of the autobiography. I had stopped writing at age 40. So I continued, and that's how the book became very voluminous, to a point where both Penguin and Jakana told me that it was actually 3 books in one. And they advised me to subdivide the book into 3. This is the middle part. The last part of the first part remains the autobiography, it's unpublished. This is the middle part, also because when I began to speak about state capture, people asked, why now? Why are you only speaking now? Are you speaking now because you are out of parliament? And what people don't know is that I went out of parliament because of a forced injury. I did not lose an election. I did not leave parliament at the end of an election. I was in hospital for 11 months, and in between there was a national election. And I was injured because I was fighting corruption. So I needed to point some of the things that I had been doing fighting corruption for many, many years, including the two issues I would like to highlight here. In fact, let me start with one. Pinning down a delinquent big fish, which is chapter 9 of the book. It deals with how I defended, protected a 21-year-old that was an intern in parliament against a chief whip that wanted to take sexual advantage of this youngster. And at the end of the day, after 3 disciplinary hearings and an appeal, I and that girl won the case, and that chief whip lost, and it was a chief whip of the majority party of the ANC, lost his seat. We forced the ANC to get rid of him, lost his seat as a member of parliament and his position as chief whip of the ANC. So that predates the state capture things. In the book also I document about how I fought corruption in the Northern Cape even before I became a Member of Parliament. Under the first two male useless public protectors that were the predecessors of Tulima Donze. So it was to show that I'm not speaking now. I've always been speaking out against corruption. But it was also addressing questions of who is Vytjie Mentor? Is she this loony, mad woman that I was said to be by my distractors? Because that's what my comrades in the ANC told the world, that I have lost a few screws in my head, I'm not sane, and all those things. So in fact, in terms of the, firstly, they had not examined me and my head. Secondly, I had not presented myself before them as a patient. Thirdly, the Constitution says that everybody must be sane that becomes a Member of Parliament and holds public office. So if I'm insane, it means they failed on their duty because they sent an insane person to become a Member of Parliament. But anyway, what scared the publishers the most was when I wrote about Isop Pahat. I think the chapter on him is the longest one in this book. I called it the missing link for state capture, because we see the many other people who speak about the many other people, but we do not trace who was actually the chief engineer. So the publishers were scared about that because they know Isop Pahat to be a bully. He was a bully around, a bully that silenced the query into arms deal. He was the ringleader in silencing that query. And I asked myself why, amongst other things, when I was looking at him as a character and a player in state capture. And that revealed many other things. They were also worried that I've called the president himself a sexual predator. And I had accounted for his sexual predation attempts on me when I carried my first child at the University of Durban, Westville, when at the first the first elective conference of the ANC in 1991. So they said the president is going to sue. I said, I'm willing to meet him in court because I have my evidence intact and I have my witnesses. So the president never went to court. Isop Pahat never went to court. I wrote extensively about him here, how he is the genesis of state capture. One chapter I would like to draw your attention to is the other thing that they tried to use against me as a whistleblower is the trip that I took to China in 2010, which was part of the state visit when President Zuma visited China in 2010. An invitation landed. I was chairing public enterprises at that time in Parliament, but I was also simultaneously chairing the ANC caucus. An invitation landed on my desk, and I appreciated that invitation because just before 2010, we have had electricity problems in Eskom and the lights going off, and we were worried about 2010. And we had agreed as Parliament that we would assist Eskom and all other state-owned enterprises to work together to reverse the energy threat for our country, because we recognize that it could cause immeasurable harm on the economy if the issue of energy insecurity was to continue. So we did all things. I was invited all over the world. I selectively chose, I was invited by Arriva, which is a French nuclear energy company operating also in South Africa. I declined that invitation because that invitation was coming with a whole lot of things. I was invited by the Chinese to go and look at Shanghai Electric and how China managed to to deal with a problem that we were confronted with at that time. And in fact, when Kgalema Motlanthe was still Secretary General, before he became caretaker president, he had instructed me to receive a delegation of Chinese in Parliament to address the issue. And after that, receiving that delegation, they invited me to China to go and see China Electric and all those things. So when this invitation landed on my desk, which came from DTI, about the state visit and that I could visit, be part of it, I welcomed it. But Parliament was in recess. So there was no way Parliament could have approved my travel budget to China. I approached ESCOM, and between my ESCOM's chairperson and CEO were overseas. They said, no, we will make sure that you travel to China because you are going to address a problem address in the sense of just facilitating, because as MPs and as the executive, we are not supposed to meddle in the contractual or arrangement of issues and all, we just facilitate. ESCOM delayed, and then I knocked on the door of Transnet because at that time we were having a multidisciplinary approach to the problem of energy insecurity. So they agreed to buy my ticket and to secure my accommodation. The long story short, in my coach, when I was traveling there, Duduzane Zuma came to greet with an African man and an Indian man. I could recognize him from the newspapers, but I did not know who these people were, but he introduced them to me. When we landed in China at the state visit, one of these people was in charge of logistics and was even ordering ministers around. Later on, I came to understand that he was Atul Gupta. My accreditation, including he was even doing accreditation for state dinner, which was a highly exclusive event. That night before the state dinner, I was invited. Somebody called me with a heavy accent, called my hotel room, and said President Zuma wanted to see me where he stayed in China, courtesy of the Chinese government. I was shocked and I refused, and I was preparing myself for state dinner. This guy threatened me and tried to bully me on the phone, and I said, "You're not going to do that." And then he said, "I'm going to call the president to tell him that you are refusing." What was uppermost in my mind, knowing him to be a sexual predator, I thought he was pursuing what he had tried to do with me earlier on, 20 years earlier when I was having my baby. Little did I know that he actually wanted to facilitate state capture because I was chairing the public enterprises portfolio. So I refused to go, and then this guy threatened that he was going to call the president. I said, "You can call." I said, "I'm going to call you after 10 minutes. I said, "Do so." I switched off my mobile. He managed to call me on my landline. And then I said, "I'm not going." Later on, I came to realize that that person was AJ Gupta. Before the Chinese trip, there was the issue of the pebble bed modular reactor. That after the Polokwane conference became a point of interest for the ANC. They wanted to close that project. It didn't make sense in the wake of energy insecurity that an experiment for energy purposes that we had undertaken for 10 years and had spent 8 billion rand on, whilst it was beginning to produce results, we wanted to shut off. For me, the two did not make sense. So at that time, before Zuma was president, Kgalema Motlanthe was caretaker's president. I went to see him in the presidential house in Rondebosch. I said, "But what is this thing? It doesn't make sense." He referred me to Lutulu House, and then Lutulu House, which was Jesse Duarte and Mantashe, directed me to Zuma. I tried on several occasions through JJ, who was his parliamentary officer, through Laleka, Kaunda for 3 months to get hold of him to discuss the issue of PBMR. When I returned from China, from his state visit, I got a call one Sunday night that he was now ready to see me for the PBMR discussion. And I was to take the flight the following morning. I assumed that I was going to the Union Building. And I asked, am I going to rent myself a car to the Union Building? No, you will be picked up. There will be people holding your name. And so when I arrived there were 2 Indian-looking guys. I could recognize this Atul a little bit, but they were wearing, I mean, when we grew up, we used to say, this is now a funny racial joke, and no offense intended. We used to say, white people say, ons leek almal dieselfde. So, for me, hulle leek ook soms dieselfde. So I suspected, but I was not sure, because en route to China, he was casual and all. Now he looked like the president's maid. They were wearing black suits, dark glasses, communicators, they were the vehicle. Everything looked so presidential. But I never ended up in the Union Building. My first stop was Sahara Computers, where I was introduced to AJ, and then they introduced me to AJ, and then thereafter I meet AJ again in the house in Saxon World. I'm told the president is engaged, will be late the whole day. There is no Union Building. He will meet me at the venue. This venue happens to be Saxon World. I'm taken there, I wait there, I'm given the proposal that if I kill the SA route to India and back, I would become minister in the next few weeks of public enterprises. But I was also supposed to do things for, and then I was made to understand why PBMR was being killed. That the government is going to build a huge nuclear plant, and they were going to supply uranium, and because the Northern Cape is rich in uranium, and I come from the Northern Cape, I could be a facilitator in them becoming the largest supplier of uranium to the nuclear plant. That actually, the suggestion of the airline made me angry, but not as angry as the suggestion of uranium. Because that actually showed me that whatever that I have been discussing about the PBMR with Kalema, with Jesse Duarte, and wanting to discuss with the president is also discussed by this. I've been a fool running around, trying to save a government project that is going to be killed. There is an intention to kill it, not because it's useless, not because it has wasted money, but because some people had to supply uranium to a nuclear plant which, and in my understanding, you can't build a nuclear plant in 10 years, less than 10 years time. Maybe it takes 15 years. But we had just had an energy crisis. But we were killing a plant that was almost ready to solve our energy problems. Then we want to build another one that was going to take 15 years to produce. And we have already, people are lined up already to be beneficiaries of this kind of arrangement. That's when I began to lose my cool, and that's when all of a sudden the president appeared in that house. From a direction I did not expect him to appear from. A whole lot of those other nitty-gritties, I have saved them in the book that contains my evidence that I will put before the Commission of Inquiry. That is the only reason why I have not published the second book. Because I was fearful that if I divulge too much in a book form, I am forewarning those that I am going to testify against in the judicial inquiry. And it is for that reason that firstly, when the president was trying to block Thulima Donzela's report being publicized, I went to court. And we won that case. The EFF and DA joined me, so we forced him to publish it. And then, when he decided that the Commission of Inquiry through the courts should not be set up, we went to court again. Because I was thinking that, I still think so, that the Commission of Inquiry, because it will have, Thulima Donzela did not have enough time, they did not give her enough money, only the Commission of Inquiry will be able to reveal more. In conclusion, I'm personally disappointed that Judge Zondo said that the whole intention of the Commission is for South Africa to know the extent of state capture. I think over and above that, the whole exercise should be to bring those that were involved to book, but not only that, but also to get what belongs to South Africa back to South Africa, wherever it is in the world today. So I think if the Commission does not attain those objectives, it will be a useless, expensive exercise and waste of time. And I therefore ask again, where to, what next? Who is going to do what? I am still willing to play my part in fighting against this, but it cannot be a one person or a pocket of people's responsibility. Hence, at the end of the book, I make a call, a clarion call to all South Africans to do something about these things. Because if we don't stand together, it's going to be another show, another expensive show. At the end, yes, we'll understand the scale of state capture, but understanding the scale of state capture is not going to bring our resources back. It's not going to help kickstart our economy. And it will not be justice. It will not be full justice. I thank you. I was attacked. I think I was meant to be killed, but I survived. That's the long and short. And I was attacked because at that time I have not even spoken largely publicly about state capture. I was talking internally about Uganda. And I was saying, when is the ANC going to be bold and admit that Uganda is wrong and apologize to South Africa and deal with Zuma around Uganda? And then I became a victim.
Were your attackers brought to book?
No. In fact, incidentally, I was attacked just after entering the police main gate of Acacia Park, Parliamentary Village, on the stoop of my house, just before I went in through the door. 3 months later, when the doctors asked me who wants your memory deleted, and when we did an investigation, we found out that the people that were on duty that night had all resigned from the police force. And the ambulance people that had picked me up that night, who took 1 hour 30 minutes instead of 10 minutes, because I lived next to N1 City Hospital, also had resigned. I spent 30,000 rand pursuing a private investigation, after which I decided, no, I'm closing this. I will fight them by exposing the truth. I live in Durbanville, which is a predominantly Afrikaner community. The police people there look after me very well. The community have accepted me. My neighbors, they volunteer to look after me and my family. When I go away, I let them know. But I dip a lot into prayer and faith. And when my father died and when I was in hospital, I said to God, there must be a reason why you have let me through this. And if I'm to take, because I knew that I was assailed for Uganda. And I said, if I'm to take this through your mercy and grace, you're not going to drop me along the path, and I'll hold on to you the whole time. And that's what I did. Whenever I get very threatened, I did not want to come to them. because it's a lion's den for me. But then I said, it means I don't trust God. I will still go to them. And if you notice, for the last 2 days, I've not posted much on my Facebook page because I don't want them to locate me. Yeah. Then I will post once I'm out of it. So on a day-to-day basis, I take measures, precautionary measures too, you know. But largely, I think I've been sustained by God and faith and His mercy and grace and my neighbors.
I've never heard this angle of Isat Bahad before.
Interesting.
Can you give, without telling too much, can you just say a bit more about that?
Buy this book, it's all in here. Isopad appointed AJ as part of the International Marketing Council, and he gave him Asia and other fields. And that's why state capture initially, the beneficiaries or partners are largely from Asia. And he is the one, and then he himself said he met that first in India. Last year on television, before he met them here. So they met in India and made their own agreements. After he made him into this thing of IMC, one of the directors, then they wanted to make inroads into the ANC leadership. They tried to make inroads into Mandela and Beki blocked that. But then officially, ESOP said, may I take them as my responsibility, and that's where it ended. And from there, the rest is history, and I urge you, the longest chapter in this book talks about ESOP Bahad. And if you read it, this book has been in the market for more than a year. He should have sued, and he hasn't sued, and that makes you think.
Okay.